There's a war on humanity, a war against the people waged by predators and philanthropaths, aided by poodles in government and the establishment. The declared aim of the war is to force all of us to accept less. At what point did we abandon the notion of hopes and dreams, the desirability of abundance, of plenty? The message from on high used to be about going forth, being fruitful and multiplying. The more the merrier, we were told. The desire was for abundance, including an abundance of people, but not anymore. If you don't hate people, then you might see that more people in the world means more good ideas, more problem-solving potential. If you combine copper and tin, just two elements, you get bronze and a harder edge. If you combine 4 elements, or 10, the potential comes in numbers with more zeros than a person might count. Limitless potential. It's the same with people and good ideas. But for a long time, the message from above has been that humanity is a mistake by Mother Earth, that we are a plague she would do better without. Transhumanism is more of the same, the notion that humanity is not good enough and hopeless without an upgrade made of merging flesh with technology. Technology to make more trillions of dollars for the technocrats and philanthropaths. Transhumanism is eugenics, the conviction that some clever people must take responsibility for ridding the species of perceived flaws and inadequacies, playing God. The original eugenicists spoke and wrote about useless mouths. The transhumanists speak and write about useless eaters. What goes around comes around, eh? The anti-human agenda is everywhere, infecting every walk of life. It baffles me that we're supposed to accept those preaching that we should have less of everything except cold, hunger and poverty, demonstrably can't get enough for themselves, of everything. Software salesman Bill Gates is one of many who talks about how the future will be a better place if fewer people are alive on the planet. In a world in which infertility is everywhere, in which nation after nation, especially in the West, is failing to produce enough babies even to maintain populations, where children are mutilated into barren sterility, Gates and co. preach the religion of managed extinction. He's hardly alone. In an article in The Guardian in 2009, the late Duke of Edinburgh, a father of 4 himself, was quoted saying, "In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation." Stanley Johnson, father of baby daddy Boris, and of 4 children in total, predicts a future Britain doing splendidly if the island is home to just 10 to 15 million people. Bill Gates is all about limited aspirations for everyone else, everyone but him and his, and yet he has a fortune and a haul of possessions so great it's impossible to unearth and list the extent of it all. He certainly has a financial worth to be counted in the hundreds of billions of dollars. He's the largest landowner in the United States with holdings in excess of 270,000 acres. While Agenda 21, the humanity-hating blueprint for sustainability, a word that's shorthand for you can't have any of that anymore, promotes an end to private home ownership and single occupancy, Gates has multiple homes. His principal address is a 66,000 square foot mansion in Medina, Washington, valued in 2021 at $130 million. It's nicknamed Xanadu 2.0 and has, among mind-boggling range and opulence, a dining room for 200 people. He's no fan of cattle, old Bill, and has said all the people of the developed nations should switch to meat grown in laboratories for sale by companies he owns, obviously having invested heavily in Frankenstein fodder. It's not about saving the planet, because the production of this ultra-processed material has a heftier carbon footprint pound for pound than cattle themselves. Bill Gates is very upset about how much carbon you and I make while living our little lives. And yet, as of February this year, his collection of aircraft numbered 6, 4 private jets, a helicopter and a seaplane. He has described private jets as his guilty pleasure. For Gates and his ilk, we are the problem, while he, in his own mind at least, is the solution. The so-called elites of the World Economic Forum pontificate about how all the control in the world ought to be in their hands, the hands of a technocracy. I prefer cacocracy, being ruled by the very worst of people, while we, on the other hand, should have nothing and be happy. When I talk about these stated aims of the WEF, I'm dismissed by the mainstream and their paid shills as a conspiracy theorist, and yet the avowed intention to increase the elite control of everything is there to be read in their own policy documents. My point remains, we are lectured and hectored about the necessity to live smaller, hungrier, colder, limited lives by those whose lifestyles are an exercise in excess. Joe Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, who preaches the end of the world is nigh, has a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars and owns multiple homes. The family private jet was only sold last year after news broke it had pumped out 325 metric tonnes of carbon during just the first 18 months of his boss's presidency. When Democrat Al Gore ran for US president in the year 2000, his worth was listed at $1.7 million. 2 decades of climate alarmism later, and he's worth $300 million. His investment firm is valued at $36 billion and pays him $2 million a month in salary alone. The father of 4 has multiple homes, including a waterfront mansion in Montecito, valued at $13 million, which seems like quite a punt for a man who predicts the world's oceans are set to rise by 10 feet, or perhaps much more. All around us are high-profile billionaires and multimillionaires preaching the need for crushing restraint for the proles from the comfort of sun loungers on the decks of super yachts. Among much else, we need a new, bigger word to replace hypocrisy, which is just not cutting it anymore. This week, a vast majority of British MPs nodded through an energy bill which grants the power of forced entry to private homes to install smart meters, kill switches, enabling the remote disconnection of homes at the will of the state. Wastes of skin in Westminster waved through legislation that means that while the maximum sentence for common assault is 6 months in jail, failure to install a heat pump might see you behind bars for a whole year. Attack and beat a woman in the street and do 6 months. Light a wood-burning stove on a cold winter's night and do twice that much porridge. In the context of Agenda 21, this claim of right to enter private homes smells a lot like letting people know their homes are not their own, just as they'd like us to accept our children are not ours either. That the country has not risen in open revolt at this pernicious evil is frankly beyond me. Some commentators refuse to condone the, how should I say it, retirement of ULEZ cameras by citizen soldiers. To hell with such spinelessness. I cheer every time I see another one fall. But set all that aside. In the final analysis, it comes down to the sanctity of human life. I talk about the attack on humanity as a whole, but it matters more to remember every human life. He who saves one life, as the Talmud has it, saves the world entire. If we stand by while this wickedness unfolds, I say we are accomplices before, during and after the fact. There are stains on our souls that won't wash out. I say again, and I'll keep saying while I have breath, that this is the era of techno predators and philanthropists, philanthropaths, who cloak evil intent in empty claims of sustainability, diversity, communitarianism and the greater good. I say we are good enough, and even if we weren't, we won't be improved by narcissistic, myopic, elderly ghouls with chronic misanthropy. Here's the thing. In the end, it's about the life of the one, every one of us. What the state seeks to do to the one can happen to any and all of us unless we say no. I grew up in a world that revered resistance to tyranny, the French resistance, the Dutch resistance. Those and more stood in the face of tyranny in wartime. Do you resist tyranny now, or do you wait